Right, let's get started. Thanks everybody for joining today. This is our first webinar of 2025. Hopefully you're in the right place. Today we're going to be discussing what makes a successful CRO program, and we're going to be sharing some tips on how we get a program up and running really quickly, and sharing kind of our ideas on how you can actually start to drive returns inside 30 days. So no pressure, Stephen. We've set this session up particularly for a few reasons, I think. Firstly, that we know you guys as kind of marketeers, digital professionals, are under kind of more and more pressure really to demonstrate ROI for all the activity that you produce, not just your kind of like paid activity. We know efficiency is really important. We understand from our clients that the cost of paid advertising, things like Google ads, CPCs, are increasing all the time. They're at kind of around 20-25% last year. So just sort of maximizing the most of the traffic that you get from a kind of investment point of view is really important. And I think thirdly, if you're on the call today and you haven't got a CRO program, you're not alone. We're often surprised that some of the bigger businesses that we speak to don't yet have a CRO program at all, or not an effective CRO program. So we just thought this would be a great kind of session to put in place today to hopefully provide you some tips with how to get started. A couple of things about us first before we get going. At Fresh Egg, we work really hard to drive return on investment from our CRO programs as soon as possible, and that allows us, importantly, for our clients to sort of show return on investment from CRO really quickly for the digital investment. It often helps those clients fund future investment as well. So just getting those returns in really quickly of a completely separate work streams, maybe development, etc., or more paid advertising, and generally just get more buy-in from stakeholders across their business for CRO activity as soon as possible. So looking at kind of a list of everyone that's joined today and the sign-ups, it's great to have some existing Fresh Egg clients on there, also kind of some technology partners on there. So welcome to all you guys. But there are a few people that I think are brand new to Fresh Egg. So it'd be good if I thought we'd just do one slide really on a couple of slides on Fresh Egg and who we are. So summarize kind of Fresh Egg in a sentence. We're a website and optimization agency. Our client sectors we work in are quite varied. We do lots of work in the financial services sector, property, retail and e-com, as you'd expect, automotive, education, and of course, charity. We're quite old. We're founded in 2000. Quite old. Well, I talk for myself, really. We're 65 people. We're all on the South Coast. We're in Worthing. Can't say sunny Worthing today. Unfortunately, it's just outside Brighton. We're really proud to be an Embraco Platinum partner as an agency, and also an award-winning CRO agency. Core areas of expertise, hopefully CRO, as you'd expect, but also kind of web development, UX design, SEO, and analytics. And just to introduce myself, my name's Dwight. I have a bit of a varied role. I've been at the agency for 7 years now. I'm responsible for marketing and our partnerships, and also sort of a lot of our new client relationships. So when a client comes working with us for the sort of 12 to 18 months, I kind of look after those relationships. So lots of hats. And today, going to be one of the hosts for the webinar, but I'm also joined by Stephen.
So hello, hi, I'm Stephen. I'm a director of website optimization. So we work together generally when new clients are at the right phase in their development to invest in a higher performing website. And I'd argue that that's most clients, but particularly people that are just starting their CRO journey and are looking for evidence that it's going to give them return on investment. So we work with clients in lots of different ways. Dwight, you're probably best to talk through these.
Let's do that. Before we start, just a couple of bits of housekeeping. So we've got the live chat on. So if you want to submit a question anytime, just fire it in there, and we'll do our best to sort of get to that. We're going to have a little Q&A at the end, or if there's anything sort of poignant as we go through, we'll pull them through. And if not, we'll definitely kind of follow up with everybody individually after the session. We'll send a recording out of the session as well, so don't worry about the slides and etc. We'll send all those out. Yeah, that's just a bit of housekeeping before we start. But yeah, as you mentioned, Stephen, we work with clients, I guess, in kind of these four ways, really. So some clients from a CRO perspective will just provide strategy. So it's like discovery and research, test ideas. And kind of on the flip side, we'll also work with partners that just might need help developing the test, really, and just getting a bit of velocity in. So more on the technical implementation side. And we also do a lot of work as an agency outside of these training courses, giving kind of bespoke training a little bit more in depth on CRO, all aspects of it, to kind of in-house teams where that kind of program is completely kind of in-house. But today, what we're going to focus on mainly is the full suite, really, kind of end-to-end optimization services, and sort of lifting the hood a little bit and giving you some sort of insights into how we do it. Before we get into it, we thought a good kind of way to kick off the webinar, though, sort of challenge Stephen to say, well, can you pull us for this webinar a couple of examples on what we might have driven for a client inside 30 days, just to sort of give you some examples of what good looks like when it all comes together. So we pulled a couple out for today, didn't we? We just focus on two before we get into the meat of the presentation. The first one is probably, I'd be surprised if lots of people have heard of this brand. They're a US-based travel aggregator for insurance. But when they approached Fresh Egg around about kind of 12, 18 months ago, this particular brand had no CRO strategy in place or no program. And they were looking for a partner that could really come in, hit the ground running. Coming up, I think, to kind of peak travel season at the time. And I think I'm right in saying, Stephen, they didn't even have any kind of idea on technology choice or a tool in place. So it was a complete blank canvas.
Yeah, absolutely. They had to do the works, and there was a time pressure, so we had to get everything ready for a deadline, and it was important to demonstrate return and get some uplift as quickly as possible, just to make sure that the whole marketing team were bought in. So yeah, we were under a lot of pressure.
And this was, could you just talk us through just top line, the kind of sorts of results we saw in the first 30 days of this client?
Yeah, so this was the first test that we ran. It was concluded within the first 30 days. Essentially, from our user research, we found that a lot of users were worried about missing out on deals that were not included within the aggregator mix. Which was a huge wasted opportunity, because RD did and do offer a price guarantee that was a really generous proposition. And so the first test that we ran was simply highlighting that best price guarantee within the typical user journey. And just by making that aspect of their proposition visible, we managed to drive a 12.3% increase in conversion rate, which was worth several millions of pounds in annualized incremental income, and crucially, it brought everybody in the marketing team on board with what we were trying to do straight away.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I guess, yeah, we'll go into it a little bit more detail later in terms of how we did that, but exactly that, within that kind of first 30 days, we're doing kind of tool setup, tool selection, ideation, research to come up with the idea, and kind of setting the test live in the tool as well. So great work. Second example, other end of the spectrum, really. So I think a few more you would have heard of Ageas. Ageas, again, are an insurer in the UK. Very different challenge when they came to us and wanting some results quickly. They had an existing CRO program, quite mature, but results were definitely stagnant, and the strategy was in need of a reboot. So the client really wanted us to come on board and quickly breathe some new energy into the program, and also kind of velocity. So yeah, Stephen, just maybe, I mean, obviously the results speaks for itself on the slide in terms of what we achieved in the first 30 days, but yeah, maybe just a bit of background to sort of how we went about that in 30 days.
Yeah, so it was quite similar to the RD case study, in that this was a positive outcome from some really in-depth user research. We were getting a lot of signals that users who had landed on the site after getting a quote were quite impressed by what Ageas were offering, but they probably weren't familiar with the brand, didn't know what Ageas stood for. And trust is obviously really important within this sort of area. So we focused on developing the part of the website that a user sees first when they arrive from a price comparison website. We introduced a little bit of imagery just to give a flavor of the brand and communicate who they are, what they're about. We also highlighted some of the benefits of having premium insurance above the fold. And just those small changes, again, in our first test, managed to increase conversion rate by over 3%, which alone was worth an additional £55,000 per week. So within 30 days, we were delivering tens of thousands of pounds of incremental extra income. And over the course of a year, that provided several times return on investment.
So I think on kind of both cases there, isn't it, Stephen? There was a need to get a test live really quickly, and we'll kind of share some insights into sort of I've got a few charts later on, and kind of the actual process of how we do that. But at the same time, both brands either needed a brand new strategy at the same time, or you needed, in the case of Ageas, to come and really get to grips with the user journey, understand the audiences, and kind of reboot the strategy at the same time. So a lot to do in kind of 30 days. So, but hopefully that is just a good place to kick off, and sort of those headline, both clients kind of driving over well over kind of multi-million pounds worth of return from the first couple of tests gives you an idea of what can be achieved. We thought we'd kind of dial it back a bit to start with, didn't we, really? And just probably wanted to, for anybody that's kind of brand new to CRO or wants a little bit of context, I thought it'd just be good to sort of, or hasn't considered CRO before, just, I think, Steve, can spend a few slides just getting everyone on the same level and explaining kind of what we mean by CRO and a CRO program, if that's okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So CRO is conversion rate optimization. For those of you who don't know, our aim is to increase the proportion of visitors to a website that complete a commercial goal. For charities, we work to improve donation journeys and support fundraising and things like that. For retail websites, it's about turning more of the traffic into sales. And the amazing thing about CRO is that it gives you sustained returns that compound over time. So you get long-term growth without continuously investing in advertising, which, as what I mentioned, is getting increasingly expensive and competitive. Even if you are advertising, CRO increases the value of every click that you get. So there's really never an excuse not to think about your conversion rate. It scales in a really powerful way, as you can see. And if you have a lot of returning customers, the benefits accrue at an even faster rate because every sale is an opportunity for remarketing. So CRO is the start of a lot of really, really powerful virtuous cycles. And that's why it's the best decision you can make as a marketing specialist. So to help us find opportunities for improving a website, we have a fairly generous toolkit. So we use quantitative data from analytics and tools like tree testing. We also use more qualitative data in the form of heat maps, click maps, user testing, surveys, recorded sessions, those sorts of things. All of those things give us clues about how customers are using your website, what may be preventing them from completing some of your goals, and how we might persuade them to. But at the center of CRO is A/B testing. So A/B tests are the gold standard. They allow us to optimize a website in a systematic way. It's a fairly simple concept. You split your traffic up into two groups, show one version of a web page to each group, and the version that performs best is your winner. The process is continuous. You build on each winner, and to keep the whole thing organized and to make sure that we build incrementally, we organize our experiments through hypotheses. If you're interested in why we do things like that or how exactly we structure our hypotheses, we can talk about that later. But for now, it's probably more useful to look at how we kickstart a CRO project and get some results within the first 30 days.
We said, didn't we? I hope that's a good bit of context, isn't it? What might be quite good. We've got a couple of, got to mention this hacking. We've got a couple of interactive polls, nothing too strenuous, hopefully, but I think to help give Stephen and I a bit of context to sort of where you guys are on your CRO testing programs. We've got kind of first question, haven't we, here that we might just launch up, and great to get some feedback on just about kind of, I guess, test velocity, isn't it? And what sort of testing you guys are doing in your
that's exactly it,
organization.
So I'm on technical setup. So if this works, great. And if it doesn't, it's on me. So I hope you should see a question come through about how many A/B tests you typically run per month. And if you answer that, we'll get the results through, and then we can reflect on those in a few slides' time.
Yeah.
That seems to have worked.
Yeah, because there's some answers coming through. This is awesome.
Great.
So at the moment, about a third of you guys have not got any kind of testing live, which again is like quite reflective to the conversations we have with clients. About half of everybody kind of putting 1 to 2 tests live a month. Yeah, it's got some quite mature programs on here, kind of about 10% of you guys put in 4+ tests live a month. So a bit of a cross section, which we definitely kind of expect and get from our kind of webinar. So that's great. But yeah,
that's good to see, and good to see that the polls are working as well. All of that worry was
win-win.
Yeah, great. So how do we get a program going in 30 days? So I've split up the 30-day plan into 5 steps. Sometimes they overlap, but they're broadly chronological. We'll go through each of them in turn, and then reflect on the process as a whole. And just to reiterate, this is all about trying to get value and revenue uplift as quickly as possible. So the first step, as you can imagine, is to make sure that your tooling and your technology is all in place. It's worth, I think, for people that have not done a lot of A/B testing before, just thinking about exactly how these kinds of technologies work. I think it's a pretty remarkable technology. We don't often reflect on that, but it also has several advantages built in, which you might not have considered. So we'll just go through it quickly. The typical client server setup looks a little bit like this. So a user will click on a link or try to load a web page. The browser will make a request to the server. The server will then communicate with your CMS, which might be WordPress, Umbraco, Drupal, Optimizely, something like that. And the CMS will configure the content. The server will then return that to the browser, which starts to put the page together for a user. But it's at that point that a special piece of code in the header makes a new request to the A/B testing tool. And we'll talk a little bit about the tools that we work with later on. But whichever you choose, the tool will look for a cookie in the browser. If it doesn't find one, it puts the user into one of 2 groups. So if the user's in the variant group, it will update the page content and serve the variant experience. For users in the original group, it will make no change, but they'll still be counted in statistics. And thanks to all of that complicated behind-the-scenes process, the end experience depends entirely on which group the user is in. And all of this takes place in a fraction of a second, usually under 2 seconds, which I think is pretty astonishing. What's really amazing about this technology is that it allows us to try new things without adding a minute of work to your client, your developers. A lot of our clients have a little bit of a kind of choke point at the development in the development area. It's not easy to access development resource, and so can be a little bit hesitant about introducing new forms of web development. The amazing thing about this is that it takes place completely outside of that roadmap. So if you're struggling with a development bottleneck, this tool is a really great way to loosen that whole process up.
Yeah. I was going to say something, even like some of those use cases we talked about earlier around like paid advertising. I think one of the questions we had in was, should you run kind of paid and CRO at the same time, we'd say absolutely. And there's lots of use cases, like you say there, where, you know, if there's a big development queue, we've got a big campaign live, but actually we want to run some tests around that and to optimize that in that particular time frame, then that's probably the perfect example, isn't it, of where actually using a tool to navigate a development blocker, but actually maximize your investment is perfect.
Absolutely. I mean, if a test wins, we can keep delivering it through the tool, which, you know, that means that we can make changes to a website much quicker than we otherwise would be able to. Often that the code from those test experiences can be implemented more or less straight away. So that takes actually some of the development effort away from your roadmap. There's also all sorts of additional features a lot of these tools have that they can deliver in the exact same way. So you can have product recommendations, notifications, widgets, even personalization delivered all through this one package. So it's a really fantastic thing to get set up on your website as soon as possible. However, you decide to approach CRO. We often work with clients to help them choose the right A/B testing tool. There's a fantastic market out there. We partner with the leading tools, and we can recommend a solution that works for you.
Yeah, I think a question we get, Stephen, a lot, isn't it, is how much would a tool cost? I think we had one kind of submitted before. I think the answer is a range, isn't it? Really, we, you know, there are tools out there for as little as a couple of £100 a month. The sorts of programs that we often develop for our clients are quite sophisticated. Some of the testing we want to do, the features, as you mentioned, Stephen, on what we want to bring alongside that, from product recs, personalization, that sort of stuff, often lead us down to perhaps more, I guess, enterprise level testing tools, solutions. Yeah, we've got a number of partners, just some of them on here. So if you are looking for advice around a tool, or some consultancy around that, then do get in touch with us, because yeah, we can definitely help.
Yep. There's a solution for everyone. There's no excuse not to look into this, and we can train your team if you need it as well. So that's step one, is setting up your technology. Step two is our data analysis phase.
Before we get into that as well, then, in terms of, again, another thing that comes out from a client, seems to me, is like, I guess maybe a bit of nervousness about how hard that is to get set up. Yeah. But in reality, it is quite simple, isn't it, from a kind of technology point of view, from effort of dev their side, potentially.
Very, very quick to do, very easy. Onboarding processes are thorough, and we can take on as much of that process as is needed.
Usually a snippet of code, though, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Very little effort to set up.
Yeah. Cool.
So, data analysis. Step two. We use analytics data in lots of different ways. One thing is obviously to understand how a website fits in with a customer journey. But we also use it in more particular ways. So your analytics data for the previous year is what we use to establish our uplift targets. We'll use flow reports to identify the pages where we can run tests, and it can also tell us what we need to change on a particular page to influence behavior. A good example of this would be a test that we ran for a retail website a little while ago. We noticed through the analytics that visitors from outside the UK were exiting at the product page. It's a little bit of a conundrum for us. But when we visited the website, we saw that there was a huge amount of delivery information specific to mainland UK customers on those pages, which suggested to us a fairly obvious remedy, which was to implement some personalized notifications for EU visitors with details about international delivery. And implementing that very quickly increased revenue per customer by a massive 24%, which was a huge win, obviously, for the client. And again, similar to the RD example, just by recognizing the opportunity that was there, we managed to unlock a huge improvement in performance.
I guess sometimes as well, Steve, we notice a bit of nervousness from clients around getting a testing program up if they've got a little bit of insecurity around their data. So obviously, hopefully everyone's coming off the back of kind of GA4 and feeling a bit more comfortable with it. But from our experience, that's often not a blocker, is it? Because we can use some of the data as well in the kind of testing tools themselves to sort of start to sort of monitor performance of tests. So there's usually obviously work we can do with clients that help them improve their GA or kind of daily setups, but basically it's more, there is solution. It shouldn't be a blocker, should it? If you've got gaps in the data, or there's ways we can use the tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Performance of a test is calculated within the tool. You can set up an integration with your GA4 or whatever analytics platform you use. Other options are available. But if you are in a situation where you don't feel like you can trust your GA4 data for whatever reason, first of all, we can help you with that. But secondly, you can use the tool to tell you how your variant's doing, and also some interesting behavioral data as well.
But Integral will use some form of data, isn't it? Because effectively, what this is telling us is the high value areas, what's going to make a difference, and like you said before, just giving us that statistical analysis to work out what we're going to be driving from the program.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Cool. So that's phase 2. Phase 3 is all about designing your tests. So once we found the best pages to focus on and understood a bit of the behavioral context, we start exploring test concepts. And that's where a lot of these other research methods come in. I'm not going to go into all of them in detail, but it's worth mentioning that the qualitative research continues throughout the first 30 days. That's how we build out our test backlog so that we can end the period with a really rich and well-evidenced 12-month roadmap. To make sure that we start at a sprint, we also have 1 or 2 other tools that we use that give our agency and our team a head start over any other people that might be approaching a CRO roadmap. So first of all, we have a test archive, and this archive includes hundreds of test concepts and results for each industry that we work in from the past 5 years. When we start a new project, the archive gives us this massive head start because we can see things that have worked in particular areas for a given website in a given industry. We can also qualify the ideas that we've got and see whether that kind of an intervention has proved valuable in the past, how big the change has been on the website and in the user behavior. So this has been a big part of allowing us to bring forward the revenue impact of our programs to within those first 30 days.
And really forecasting, isn't it? And being, really confident to the best of our abilities on what we think a program should be driving and will drive.
Exactly. Yeah, this gives us context, which means that we can forecast more accurately. Alongside that, we have industry-specific prioritization frameworks, which I don't think anyone else finds this as interesting as I find this, but it's really, really important because this is how we decide which tests are likely to give us the biggest results and the best results on a given page. So we score tests against the criteria that you can see: traffic, evidence, technical ease, potential value. A lot of that draws information from the test archive. This whole process allows us to score and rank test concepts based on factors that have been proven to predict success. We want to start the project, obviously, with the most promising tests, and this approach does that with pretty unerring accuracy.
I think here as well, then we work with lots of clients that might have pockets of testing across the business, isn't it? Whether it's different products or different areas, there might be an acquisition journey and then there'll be a product team testing. Or different, in case of insurance, isn't it? Different products. This I definitely would encourage, centralized prioritization methodology. And I think a lot of the stuff that we do, although we make them sector specific, can be kind of is really adaptable, isn't it, to an individual in-house client team. But what that gives you, isn't it, is a bit of consistency about how you're prioritizing tests across the roadmap. And that's sometimes the bigger, when dev resource is tight, that is one of the sort of bigger challenges. So having that kind of centralized view on prioritization can kind of really help kind of set the program. But like you say, Stephen, just identify and be really sure that within the first 2 or 3 tests that you're setting up in the program, that these are the ones that are going to make the biggest return and the quickest return versus the effort required.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It also allows you to be slightly more informed about risk, about your appetite for innovative and exploratory tests, as opposed to tests that we think are going to drive performance increases, but maybe there's not more to do in that area.
Yeah.
So this kind of gives you a geography of your testing program.
Maybe, give us a kind of couple of examples of why we tweak them to industry. So would sort of, I guess I'm looking at there, you can tell me if it's right up, but would insurance be compliance or sort of those sorts of complexities about actually getting a test through be a specific one, or kind of, do you have any examples of
so the reason that we tweak it for different industries is that user behavior is really, really different depending on what the purchase is. Insurance is a really good example because trust is absolutely central to anything that a customer is likely to do when they're looking for an insurance provider. And because of that, one of the areas that's been really successful for insurers is social signals, trying to make the social context as visible as possible within the quote to buy journey. It's not something that a lot of insurers intuitively are focused on when they're designing their websites for the first time. But looking at our test archive and feeding that information through to our framework, we can see that just by giving people a little bit of a sense of what other people are doing and reassuring them that their provider is respected, trusted, we can preserve customers that otherwise would be maybe a bit nervous.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good example, isn't it? Yeah.
That kind of thing. And other kinds of behavioral interventions are more effective with other industries. So, for example, within retail, things like product recommendations can be really powerful. It's a very different type of customer journey. There's much more browsing involved rather than a straightforward end-to-end journey. And additionally, things like urgency and scarcity could be much more powerful in that context.
So it's about factoring those sorts of things into your prioritization matrix to make sure they're considered, scored, and kind of factor into that final grading. Cool.
And that's very difficult to do unless you've got a backlog of hundreds of tests. Yeah. So step 4, we're racing along. Step 4 is about building rock solid experiments and actually getting your test built. We can talk about the specifics of our production workflow later, but for now, I'll just highlight some of the advantages of our particular approach. So the first thing is that it's completely transparent, which our clients almost universally really appreciate. It gives complete security and accountability at every step, and it means that if there ever is any kind of roadblock or technical issue, we can solve it quicker than any other technical team would be able to. There's multiple guardrails, which again builds that confidence, and it means you can trust your test experiences and the experiment data 100%. Secondly, because we build experiences client-side, you can sidestep the development bottleneck, which we've discussed previously. And if you ever have a worry, you can start and stop experiments with a single click within the tool. So complete confidence, security, and peace of mind.
Well, what would you say, what does a client absolutely have to have in place before you can start building tests? Key things.
So the first thing is obviously to have the tool implemented. That's really important. Apart from that, we'll take on a lot of the actual production work ourselves. We like to have a sense of anything coming up in the period that a test will be live. So if there's a plan to introduce any code releases during that time, then we like to have a bit of oversight of that. But that's it really. We do the rest. Yeah.
And I think if we're thinking about a client who's putting this in their own kind of program, some of the other stuff, isn't it? Just, I think, clarity and sort of ownership of roles, I think. And if you're thinking about getting an experimentation program up quickly, just real kind of like stakeholder buy-in, but also kind of, you know, what the expectations are for different kind of people across the way. And I think kind of like agreements isn't on methodologies, things like kind of when you're going to call a test, that sort of stuff. I think having those in place before the program starts are pretty key.
Yeah, absolutely. So something that we're really hot on is collaboration. When we start a new project with a new client, we want to get buy-in throughout the team and to establish really tight working relationships with the people that are already in place. That's what is going to help us get results quickly. So once our first tests are live, we start to think about what the rest of the program might look like. So step 5 is about planning for long-term success. First, let's have a quick recap of the previous 4 stages, because the first 30 days really are only playing a part in what we hope will be a 12-month project. And not only do we want to get results, but we also want to put the foundations in place for continued success and continued optimization. This is what those first 30 days look like. And I know that you mentioned that you found this Gantt chart frightening. But it's not frightening when you look at it step by step. So if we say that in day 1, we want to have the tool ready to go, that's step 1. Step 2 is our analytics research, which we've discussed. That's really important to make sure that everything we do is well evidenced and supported by the data. After that, we start to do some of the user research and put together test concepts. That's when we use our archive and our prioritization matrix. Finally, we start to build the tests. You can see that happens in a few stages. Put together the documentation, work very closely with the code to put together some really reliable test variants. We'll typically introduce a soft launch as well, just for added peace of mind. And finally, we'll run those tests to their conclusion, feeding insights back into our research. And there's every chance that we'll be able to declare a winner within that first 30 days. So over the past 12 months, we've had a test win rate of just under 40%. It's actually devastatingly, it's 39% win rate. But with that in mind, running 2 tests, there's every chance that one of those 2 will have a really impressive impact. And the average impact from our tests has been well above the industry average.
Yeah. What's the industry average? My understanding, Stephen, for test win rate, what's 20%, something like that? Is it lower?
Lower than that.
Lower.
Yeah. It depends on industries and things like that.
Yeah.
But typically, I think a lot of agencies would be happy with an impact of under 5%.
Wow. Okay. So
we'd be, and you know, as you can see from our case studies, we're operating at a different level.
I mean, I think what this hopefully is useful to do in terms of putting that 30 days in context is definitely for those kind of clients and marketers on the line that, you know, they want to do this in-house, isn't it? They get and hopefully sort of helps put those kind of steps into context. When we work with a new client, we've often done a bit of research also kind of in kind of a selection phase up front in terms of a lot of the quant research, and we will have, because we've put together a kind of robust forecast, we will have an idea of what those high value tests are live. So for a fresh egg client, we can kind of pull that forward even more by assuming the sort of testing tools in place. We can often, and we do encourage clients to sort of, if we're confident, collaboratively, like you say, together, that these are the first logical tests to start with, then we can have those live inside the first week. But even there, you know, you mentioned eventually, I mean, we're only talking kind of 2 weeks, isn't it? And I think that is slightly different to some of the other conversations that I've had with the people in the market, where, you know, that first month typically might be, let's do some research, and after 4 weeks we'll come back and tell you what we think we should put live. This is all about velocity. This is about having a winner, like you say, after 28 days, not our first test live after 28 days. So yeah, you have to go at pace, you have to be organized, but it is possible.
Yeah. Well, this is the approach that gets the buy-in from the CEOs and the heads of marketing at the very, very start. And it also gets everybody excited about what we're doing.
On that point, maybe we'll come on to it when we show the full program, but when, maybe give the guys a bit of a insight into when do we actually start to think about targets? When would we in that particular point? It's not on there, is it, at the moment? But when will we have set the client for the target for the program?
It's not on there. It's on there now. So so the structure of a 12-month project typically looks a bit like this. We'll take the overall uplift target, and that shows us where we want to be after 4 months. So the first milestone is after 4 months, although we expect to be demonstrating value after the first 30 days. That's maybe a good time to revisit the polls that we've done.
Definitely. That all sounds great, doesn't it, in theory? But we thought with second poll we'd probably ask you really what are there any blockers in place at the moment for anybody that's trying to get a testing program alive, or what makes that difficult, I think.
Exactly. So if I end that poll and go back and launch the second one, you should see this come through. Basically, we want to know what your biggest CRO obstacles are. These are things that we've heard from clients previously. So if they resonate with you, then let us know. A lot of clients need a little bit of developer support. They don't have that maybe internally. Other people are not happy with their tool. It's quite common to have people that have had a program running for a little while without seeing big winners, which is always a bit demoralizing. So that's something that we hear from some of our clients as well. But also, if you've got an obstacle that isn't on that list, then if you let us know in the Q&A section. That'd be really interesting to talk about.
Yeah, that's good.
Later on.
Yeah, should we just have a quick read out a few of those results?
Yeah.
We can have a little look at the Q&As now. I saw a couple of questions drop in, so let's have a quick look at that as well. Stop here. So well, I think isn't it, quite a lot of the developers, quite a big one for us, but that's 10%. People kind of needing developer support. Tooling's interesting. Third of you don't feel the tool's sort of good enough at the moment, so that's really interesting. Again, we can definitely kind of offer some advice and help and introduce some of our partners there. Need for bigger winners. Again, the last two, need for bigger winners, and not enough interest from our team. Around about kind of 40% in total, or 20% of everybody there. So a real split really across the board. And then as you mentioned, 27% is something completely different off the poll. So it'd be great to see if we can get some comments. Should read a few of those out. The Q&A. Thank you for filling these polls in, by the way. They're great.
Okay, so got a couple of questions.
Let's scroll down and then get the poll.
Here we go.
Is it in the chat, actually?
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Sorry.
Okay, so someone here is saying, my something else is time. We have a lot of tests planned, but impact the same journey, so need to wait for a test to be completed. Any tips on how you manage this? Or do you set a timescale for tests? That is a very good question. So it's a fairly common issue. You have maybe one page with enough traffic and conversions to make a test reasonable. You've got a lot of test concepts, and you're waiting 4 to 8 weeks for a test to complete before you run another one. We'd have a couple of ways to loosen that whole process up. First thing is, if your tests are not running on the same elements and they don't influence users in the same way, we've actually had quite a lot of success running tests simultaneously, and we haven't seen any kind of interaction effects that we would be worried about. It's something that you can analyze mid-test and post-test in the statistics, any interaction between them. But once you get into a situation where you're comfortable running 2 or 3 tests together, that tends to open up a lot more opportunity for velocity. At the same time, you can obviously reduce the running length of a test by accepting a little bit more risk. So you can reduce your confidence threshold. I think the industry standard at one point was 95%, but now it's much more conventional to use a 90% threshold, which means that 10% of the time you might commit to a result, and it's more about statistical variance, but you're still fairly confident that what you think's happened has been a result of the changes that you've made, and that the cost of having that confidence threshold prohibitively high is that you never get through your roadmap, and you're just stuck testing one thing for months and months.
Yeah, no, it's a good answer. Hopefully that answers the question there. I've had a similar one, haven't we, in the Q&A? I think, yeah, just to sort of flag the example we put up on the chart is kind of for 2 tests a month. It's a kind of model we're using with a lot of clients on our kind of performance guarantee programs. That's not to say we're not working with clients that have got a much kind of higher velocity, or on the flip side don't kind of run kind of 2 tests a month, so definitely kind of flexible. I'm not sure, I think we covered a little bit kind of how we do that, or how we kind of mitigate risk when we're running kind of multiple tests. Does the tool have an impact there?
Yeah, so there are some features that tools have that allow you to run simultaneous tests in different ways. So you can do mutual exclusions and things like that. Our preference is to run the 2 tests without those conditions in place, and to make sure in our statistical analysis that they don't interact. That way we get the highest velocity possible, but we also have confidence in the data. But if it's something that you're particularly worried about, we can always explore both ways.
I think one of the final points here was like traffic effects and velocity, definitely. And again, some clients and sectors that we work with kind of will look at a website and, at the one end of the scale, there just won't be the traffic there at all really for A/B testing. Not always, and not kind of, it's not a common thing, but on that instance, we'll still be able to work with a client in terms of applying some of the same research methodology and statistical analysis to give you more of a kind of a backlog of actions to put live straight away. So that's, again, a lot of our charity clients just don't have that volume, but we can apply all the kind of best practice from tests we've seen winning before, and kind of UX recommendations on a broad research piece. I don't know if there's anything else to add around kind of traffic, because it's one that does crop up a lot actually.
Yeah, so there's 2 factors that influence the duration estimate for a test. One is traffic, the other is the conversion rate. Often hard commercial goals, the conversion rates a lot lower than some of your softer goals. So things like lead forms, people who are demonstrating interest in your product in other ways, maybe not committing to a sale immediately. So one thing that you can do is to really work on your measurement framework. If you can assign a revenue value to soft goals, then you can do A/B testing on those soft goals where the conversion rate is a little bit higher, and ideally get results a little bit quicker. You'll still be able to forecast the revenue impact, as long as your measurement framework's really effective and coherent. And that way you can test on pages that you might not have thought that you could do, and you can also optimize areas of your website that you previously hadn't considered exploring.
Cool. And I guess final question related to this will be from Sophie, who asks, what's the kind of minimum traffic threshold for A/B testing?
Yeah,
so I used to have a number I found about. I'm interested in if it's still right.
No, so it depends obviously on the conversion rate.
Yeah.
It depends a little bit on the inherent statistical variance within your website. So if the places that you get traffic from tend to change from month to month, then it can be a little bit complicated.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't set a minimum traffic threshold. We do obviously duration estimates in advance of a testing program.
Yeah, we can usually tell, can't we, have access to GA, get some statistics and sort of an initial kind of look at what you're trying to optimize to give you a pretty quick view on whether it's possible. But like I say, we always try and come at an angle of being able to enable A/B testing for or at least the kind of methodology behind it, for some of the reasons we've said. So yeah, they're really good questions. Thank you. We'll kind of anything we haven't got to, we'll kind of follow up with after the session. So yeah, probably a good segue into a bit of a recap on the successful ingredients.
Yes. So this was actually, Dwight, you asked me to put together this list of things that a client needs to have in place for our 30-day program to work really well. And so I've done that here, and I'll go through these just a little bit. So obviously you need to have data either in the tool or in the analytics platform that you can trust. If you're not convinced by your analytics platform, or you want it to be a little bit more robust, that's something that we can help you with. We've got a fantastic analytics team. They've untangled some of the most complex data pipelines that I've ever seen. And that, so if you're worried about your data, they can help. We also want to know that you've got a reasonably stable dev roadmap. So as I mentioned, if you're planning a migration, a redesign, or any really substantial code releases, then we'd need to know about that in advance. We can always work around things, but it's important to have that planned out. It's good to have a sense of how you're going to implement the code for winning tests before we start to deliver all of those lovely winners. So if you have capacity in-house, that's really valuable, but you may also be working with an agency. It's just useful to have that thought through to begin with. I mentioned having a measurement framework that you can really rely on. That's important because it opens up soft goals as something that you can test for, but it also means that you're going to be optimizing the right things, and you're going to be able to put a value on those winning tests, which is important for buy-in throughout your team. You need to have enough traffic. We'd love to offer a minimum traffic, but it's unfortunately fairly specific to individual sites and the different factors that I mentioned. But most important is this last thing, which is an appetite for change. So a lot of organizations have built in a certain resistance to evolution and change and development. It's natural, everybody's busy, life's busy, packed, isn't it? You don't want to necessarily reinvent the wheel. What we need is buy-in, excitement, enthusiasm, attitude, that really being open to the idea of experimentation and evidence-led development. As long as we've got buy-in from the team, we're pretty confident that we can deliver results very, very quickly.
I think, that's a really good wrap up, Stephen. I think the one that's cropped up on the webinar is time. Yeah. And I think all we'd say to that is, look, if you haven't got the time, but you have got kind of the appetite, again, working with a partner agency would recommend, doesn't need to be fresh egg, but ultimately, that partner who can provide kind of end-to-end can hopefully plug, and we do sit down with clients and work out kind of, it might be a design blocker, can't get time with the design team, we'll work with the agency on that. If you can't get time to come up with the research, then work with an agency on that. So I think it's those kind of hybrid agency models where time's short can often work really well with if there's budget restrictions on kind of outsourcing it all, or there's still an appetite to own the strategy in-house. So there's all sorts of models that can work. So I think we'll wrap it there. We're going to launch one final poll, aren't we? If you do that, well, I'll do a bit of talking, okay. But just we'd love to get some kind of feedback on the session. We've got about 5 minutes left. Also, just if you could spin us on a slide when you get a chance, Stephen. We just wanted to let you know we've got some upcoming training courses coming out. We've put a program together like this for the whole year, so this is just the first one. In February, we're going to be running a more web dev focused one, giving some tips on how to choose the right CMS, covering things, everything from kind of licensed to open source, headless versus traditional. So that might be of interest to people on the call. We'll send out invites for all these. And also we're going to run, I think you'll be back on, Stephen, or someone from the team, where we're going to be talking about AI, which obviously a hot topic for everybody, but we're going to specifically tell you how we're using it to kind of come up with optimization ideas for clients. I'm excited about that one. And kind of finally, before I go, I said we'll send out invites for those. We just wanted to tell you a little bit about Charity Wise. So we've got some charities on the on the call today. So hopefully some charity clients or charity prospects who are already aware of this. But alongside all the free training that we endeavour to offer our clients and the kind of general market, last year we launched Charity Wise, which we're really excited about. This is a learning hub. It basically provides charities with skills and resources to help them thrive in what you guys understand is a really complex digital marketplace, and importantly, kind of make lasting change and impact for that charity. As of this year, the Charity Wise platform is completely free for any UK charity to access. And we've got over 1,000 members already signed up and using the platform. It's got loads of content on there, loads of kind of downloadable stuff. The feedback's brilliant. So if you are a charity on here that's not using it already, then just Google Charity Wise and take a look. It'd be pretty simple to kind of sign up and share that around your teams. But now we're also looking kind of for corporate partners. So like-minded companies that want to make a positive difference in this sector and help us maintain and importantly like grow this initiative. It's only 12 months old, has some great impact. So we'll send out the recording of the session, but please forgive me, we're going to send out a few more details on Charity Wise and hopefully how either you as an individual or as a company can get involved. So yeah, that's kind of it from us. Just wanted to say thanks for attending the session. We hope you found it insightful, useful. There's loads to get through, wasn't there, Stephen, in an hour. If you've got any other questions, want any other support, then yeah, we'll come back to you individually on some of the questions in the chat, but please reach out to Stephen and I once we send out the recording, and we can yeah, look forward to connecting. But yeah, have a great rest of your
Rainy Thursday.
Yeah, not Tuesday.
Not Tuesday. Oh yeah, I forgot that.
Anything last words from you, Stephen?
There was a question about whether statistical significance calculators online are reliable. Can they be a bit misleading? Generally, they are pretty good. It's useful to have a good sense of exactly, what all of the different technical terms mean and how the statistics work before you use those tools, because there's a front-facing element to them, but a lot happens behind the scenes. So it's good to go in with your eyes open, but generally there are some really good tools out there that are completely free. A/B test guide's a good one. I think CXL has got one that's really good. We use our own, but yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about using an online calculator.
Cool, that's useful. And yeah, I've got a final one was do we have a minimum cost for sort of Fresh Egg? I think just we'll send out our details. Please get in contact with me via LinkedIn or on my email. We'll send it out. Then yeah, we can have a chat about kind of yeah, how we kind of run programs and the different options available. So yeah, just we'll do that one offline if that's okay. Great, brilliant. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully see you on some of the upcoming courses later on in the year. See you later.
Thanks very much.